All right, people, we are back. I told you we were going to be consistent this time. This is the second video that I'm filming, at least, in a week, which for me is like a record that's better than my last one by about 5,000%, considering the last time I did a video before the one I recently uploaded was 5 months ago. So we're doing pretty well. Now, I gotta talk about the elephant in the room. This microphone, it ain't doing shit. Isn't even fucking plugged in. It's just here for the vibes, pretty much for the thumbnail to make it look a little bit more professional. You know, kind of claim any ounce of professionalism that I have. In reality, it's actually the little Bluetooth microphone that's clipped onto here. But we'll brush past that and we'll get onto the topic of the video, which, rather narcissistically, is me. So I was thinking about YouTube video ideas. And I realized that I started this channel after I turned pro, after I did the only thing I've ever done that's made me somewhat relevant. And a lot of people don't know my story so far, so I thought it's a good idea to do a bit of an introduction video for the channel, for who I am, and kind of just talk about the story so far and the prep that got me my pro card. So the little quick intro is, I'm Liam, I'm a Classic Physique IFBB Pro. I turned pro at my second ever time on stage at the NPC Europeans in London. I won the overall and the juniors at 22 years old. That's pretty much it. That's the hot takes. There's really not that much more. So if that's all you're interested in, you can go. We're going to go into more depth. We're going to show some cool pictures of the journey so far, but that's really all you need to fucking know. But if you're staying around, we're going to move back right to the beginning to when I first started training, which was around about 2017, I think. Now, my phone only goes back so far. I don't have pictures from right when I started lifting. The first picture that I've got is from about 6 months to a year into my lifting career. And I'm going to put these pictures, as I talk about them, on the screen somewhere. And yeah, wow. Look at that jawline. I thought I was fucking massive. I thought I was the shit. But every high school has that one kid who goes to the gym and thinks he is God's gift to aesthetics. And yeah, that was me. That was me. So I started going to the gym. I got in. My friend Luke and my friend Jackson got me into going. And I was pretty much hooked straight away. Not too long after starting, I got an injury in rugby, which meant I couldn't play. And it was a torn meniscus. But when my knee was in a stable environment, so when my foot was planted, I could still load it. So I could still squat, leg press, whatever, as long as there was no jumping, no impact or running involved. So throughout all that time that I was waiting to get surgery, and then all the time that I was recovering, once I was obviously able to walk again after knee surgery, I was just in the gym, and I never really looked back. I never went back to rugby. To be honest, I was never even that fucking good. So I stuck with the gym. And so I'm going to show the next picture here, which is July 10th, 2017. Yeah, there was a lot of David Lade worshipping going on here, and I cringe when I look back at it. But in fact, there's no but. There's no but. And at this point, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just watching YouTube videos, watching things like bodybuilding.com. I was generally doing the 4 sets of 10 or 4 sets of 15. But I still had it in my head that I had to do every single exercise to hit the muscle in every single possible way. So I do flat dumbbell, incline dumbbell, shoulder press. Then I do flat Smith, incline Smith, Smith shoulder press. I do dumbbell flies from flat, from incline. I do them on the cables, then on the machine. Then I'd even do those standing high to low ones that everyone knows are complete fucking bullshit. I did everything. And, you know, at that point when you're that young and that new into lifting, you can do anything and it works. But that soon wore off. But what didn't, and so this was July 10th, 2017. A couple months after this was the Olympia, 2017. Now, this was the second year of Classic Physique, but it was the first year that I was aware of it and knew what it was. I didn't watch it live, of course, because it was probably a school night. But I did watch a video on YouTube that The Rock put out. It's called Behind the Olympia or Inside the Olympia or something. It's about a 20-minute video. Just kind of going through some of the like backstage stuff and some stage shots of the 2017 Olympia. It was the second year of Classic Physique, and if people remember, it was Chris Bumstead's first year. Yeah, I fucking know. It's another fucking Classic Physique IFBB pro who was inspired to start by Chris Bumstead. I know, not very original, but that's just the way it is. And honestly, as soon as I saw that, it was all over. That was all I wanted out of life. I wanted to be a bodybuilder. I wanted to win my pro card. I wanted to go to the Olympia. I had no idea what any of that shit meant. I had no idea what it entailed. I had no idea about anything in the industry. No idea that people had chased pro cards for 10 plus years. At that point, I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. But I also knew that whilst I was blessed with somewhat decent shape, even with such a small amount of muscle, and I'm going to put the next picture on screen now, which is from almost a year later. It was August 2018. I knew well enough that I had decent shape, but I was not blessed in the department of building muscle or building tissue quickly. That's something I've never been blessed in and never will. I do struggle to build muscle tissue. But I knew that I was going to have to be in it for the long haul. And I knew that I was really going to have to knuckle down. So this is the point where things started to get really serious. From that Olympia onwards, 2017, I didn't miss a single session. All my sessions were planned. They were planned horribly, but they were planned. I had some semblance of a good diet. I didn't miss meals. And this was at the point really where I'd stopped going to parties or going out or anything like that. I'd pretty much already put all my eggs in the bodybuilding basket. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, but the eggs were in that basket, and I worked my fucking ass off and did nothing else for years. So we'll move on to the next picture now. And this is the first time that the legs came out. So as I mentioned, I had that knee injury and knee surgery. My legs have always been stick thin shit, and it took a while for them to catch up. But after a couple of years of training legs like a savage for 3 hours twice a week and never wearing shorts because I was too self-conscious, I finally started looking at myself without them and realized that my quads were all right. They weren't so terrible. So this picture here is July 2019, and this is when I'd started to make an effort to learn how to pose, or at least what I thought was posing. And then we'll move on a little bit to where we made the jump. So this next picture I'm going to put up is from April 2021. I first went assisted in December. It was December 14th. It was a Monday of 2020. I remember because I pinned my pec and I was terrified. I pinned my pec with just test only with a little insulin needle, and I filmed it. I still have the video. I'm not going to show it on YouTube, but my hand is like this. So let's talk a little bit about that. And I don't want to go into too much depth because it's a bit of a rabbit hole and things can be taken out of context on YouTube. But I did start using anabolic androgenic steroids when I was 18. Now, would I advise that to others? Fuck no. But at that point, I'd already been training for about 4 years, maybe a little bit longer. I'd been training really hard and consistently for over 2. I knew 100% that this is what I wanted to do. And I waited, and I waited, and I waited. And despite all the peer pressure from the gym that I was in and the people that were around me, I waited until I was 18 and until I got to a point where I remember it was 200 pounds of body weight flat in the morning, which is nothing. It's pathetic. It's almost bikini weight now I think about it. But that was the point where I was like, right, I'm happy to go on. And I did a test only cycle to start, very low dosage. People often ask me, with the knowledge that I have and the benefit of hindsight now, would I change anything from my first cycle? And I'd quite confidently say that I'm one of the few people who would actually answer no to that question. I had good people around me who informed me well. I did lots of research. I was very, very careful. And no, test only cycle, that was a good way to go. And I made a lot of progress. As you can see from this picture here, from the one before, there's still fuck all muscle there, but there is more than there was before. And there is quite obviously some shape coming through here. Now you can see in this picture that my pecs are a little bit flat. So I did do the silly thing of tearing my pec because I thought, wow, I'm on cycle, I am strong as fuck. You know what? I'm going to pick up a 65 kilo dumbbell and see if I can press it. Which I could for about 2 shit reps, and then my pec decided it no longer wanted to be attached to bone. So that paid to pec training for a while. So yes, the chest here, particularly that right pec, does look a little bit small. But it healed. It was low grade 1 or 2, didn't require any surgery. But that was my first major injury. And kind of the story is similar from there. You know, I did my cycle, I came down. I never came off. I came down to a cruise, even though I don't know how you can have a cruise when your blast dose is just so low. I probably should have just came off. But we're going to skip ahead to around about a year later, which is March 2022. At this point, I think I'd done another 1 or 2 cycles. I think still test only. And you can see quite a lot more muscle there now. Things were really starting to take shape, and I was a couple of years deep of meal plans, training plans. I'd really dialed in my training at this point. And I was a couple of years deep of not missing a single beat. And it was a lonely teenage life. I didn't do a lot outside of the gym, outside of working. But I look back on it now, and as much as I feel like I did miss out a lot in my teenage years, and I would encourage others not to miss out on so much and to maybe experience a little bit more that life has to offer before you put all your eggs in the bodybuilding basket, I also can't say that I entirely regret it because it's brought me to where I am. So this is 2022. And then I'm going to show this next picture, which is a couple months later in 2022. Now, this picture, which I'm going to put up here somewhere. Yeah. This holds no real benefit to the wider story of me, but it's funny because I was a fat fuck. Now, this is 250 pounds Liam. I think more accurately it's 248 in these pictures. But this was just pushing 6,000 calories of food every day, like a pack of cookies every day for months, really. And I'm a skinny kid. I really tried hard to put weight on, and I was just concerned with the scale. Didn't really realize quite how fat I was getting. Obviously, this is a relaxed picture. I'm pushing my belly out. I'm not posing. It wasn't quite this bad, but it was pretty bad. And considering that this was about 3 years ago now, and I haven't touched close to that weight since, I really did not earn that 250 pounds. It was ugly. But anyway, I dieted it off, and that was my first real experience of dieting. And that will be this next picture here. You can see the little Chris Bumstead mustache coming in there. That is a couple months later in October. And yeah, you can see the shape. There's definitely potential there. So I dieted that down, and then I pushed back up a little bit. And then I did my first real diet that I did myself. First time I got really legitimately lean. And I did a photo shoot at the end of that. And I'm going to put that picture here. Yeah, I thought I was fucking Batman. And to be honest, I still do a little bit. But that was the first taste of real kind of prep experience. Now, I did it myself. I didn't really know what I was doing exactly. But you still get to experience some of the things, the hunger, the low energy, the low mood. I did this all as well on, it was test only and clen. And it was a very low dose of test. And so I obviously start to feel some of the, the dysregulation in things like sex drive and energy and low mood that regardless of PEDs, you will still experience when food gets low enough and the digging gets hard enough. But this was the first experience of all of that I had, and I loved it despite all of it. And that was really for me the solidification of, yes, this is what I really want to do in my life. And all this time I had people telling me, oh, just keep going another couple of weeks and do a show. But I knew, as I'd known for years previous, if I was just patient, that my time would come. And I was, because of this persona I'd built up in my local town and among my friends, that I was Liam the bodybuilder, I didn't want to let people down. I didn't want to let myself down. And I was petrified of stepping on stage and looking super skinny, basically looking like a first-time and natty bodybuilder. No offense to you guys, but yeah, I'm not going to say any more than that. I was just terrified of looking like shit. So I held off and I was patient. And after this photo shoot prep was when I thought, yeah, I'm, ready in both a physical position from a, body composition standpoint, but also in a life position. I was a little bit more stable and comfortable with work, with all that sort of things, that I was like, okay, I feel like I could do a bodybuilding prep now. So I actually started working with my first coach then. Now, I have only worked with one coach over my entire career, and I only plan to ever work with one coach. I'm very, very fortunate that I almost in the blind picked a coach and got the right one first time. There's a lot that goes into picking a coach, more than just, are they any good? I think you definitely have to click on a personal level. And I got very, very lucky. I started working with Ross Byrne from Team Pro Coach. And I'm going to put up the first check-in that I sent him here. This was a few weeks after that photo shoot. I'd obviously done a little bit of eating. I'm not sure exactly what weight I was here, probably around about the 220 mark. I think I put up, a good 10 pounds plus back on after the photo shoot. But, well, there's not really a but to say there. It's potential, but it's untapped potential, unfound. Now, the next set of photos I'm going to show are from almost a year later, almost a year in working with Ross, and you can see straight away, with the right guiding hands, things started to get really fucking good. Really fucking good. So this was February 2024, and this was just before I started my first prep. So at this point with Ross, we'd done a bit of a push-up, a bit of a pull back, and then another push-up for another sort of 12 to 14 weeks. And I started prep. I probably should have checked and done some research before I started filming this video, because I have all of this data. I was just too fucking lazy to check it. I'm going to say around about 235, maybe 235 pounds when I started this prep. And this is maybe a month before, so call it maybe around about 230, 232. And it's a pretty clean look to start prep. It's not a bad look at all. Now, at this point, it's also worth mentioning I had my second major injury of my career. So a couple months prior to this, it was in December 2023, I tore my quad. I do have a video of it. It's on the leg press. You can see my rectus femoris pop out through the joggers that I was wearing. And I don't know, should I put it up? Yeah, I'm going to fucking put it up, because I filmed it. I filmed the set, obviously, and then I also cropped it and put it in slow-mo where you could see my quad pop. So if you're squeamish, look away now. But this, somewhere around about here, yeah, that was a sore one. And as much as I've analysed that video over and over, I did nothing wrong. It was a high rep set. It was a weight I'd done lots of times before. My tempo was good. My form was good. Control was good. It was just one of those shit happens moments. And I will say I think I dealt with it very, very well psychologically at the time, at least. But arrogant me, I tried to push back to it too soon. It was a grade 2 tear. It didn't require any corrective surgery. Just some of the old BPC, local growth hormone treatments. Didn't require any surgery, but I tried to get back to it too soon, and I retore it around about the time of that last photo I showed you just before prep. So all throughout prep, I babied that quads I really, really babied it. I was so careful with it. The only thing that I could do for my quads in prep to full intensity was leg extensions. And obviously, for those who know when some of those drying out PED or orals come in, leg extension is one of those exercises where the joints start to feel a little bit like you're a 90-year-old bloke. It wasn't great, and it wasn't particularly fun, and I was doing for my compounds, I was doing reverse banded Smith machine squats with occlusion bands on, sets of 25 to 30 reps on the Cybex Smith with about a plate aside on. It was a shambles. It was a shit show, but we did it. We babied the quad through prep. We did lose a fair amount of, maybe not so much tissue as just fullness on the quad throughout the entire prep, but we babied it through without re-hurting it and without having to do anything different. Really, I could still do all my cardio, all my steps, and there were a couple times where it inflamed a lot and it caused, a bit of a damage to the look, but we managed to make sure that when it was inflamed and it was holding a lot of water, that wasn't at a time where I was needing to be at my best. So I'm going to show you a pic now from, this is July 29th, so this will be just over a week out from my first ever show. Now this was the Two Bros NPC Regional. This is the shot here from an in-person session with Ross at FLF in Manchester. As you can see, I was pretty fucking peeled. Now the lighting is definitely doing me all sorts of favors. It's doing bits for me here, but I was legitimately peeled at this point for the first time. You can even, if you're eagle-eyed, you can see Mr. Joe Gann behind me trying to catch a glimpse. Burr's definitely miring. And poor guy was just trying to fucking train some legs, and I was there posing in my pants. But yeah, that's about a week out from the first show. And then we've got this next picture, which is, I believe, a day out. And this was a surreal experience for me because I'd watched all these, bodybuilding videos for years, but I'd never fully experienced it. I'd never felt that I could really call myself a bodybuilder until about this moment where I was posing a day out just after registration had ended, in front of my coach Ross, in front of my good friend Yemi, who was a hero of mine, still is, IFBB Pro, now Olympian. I was posing in front of Callum Raystrick. I was posing in front of Hader, posing in front of all of these people from the industry that I knew by name and massively respected and looked up to. And all of a sudden, they were all gathered around watching me pose. Now, that was a surreal moment. That was a moment where I thought, you know what, yeah, I can call myself a bodybuilder now. And that was a big relief to me that after all these years of doing it, I finally felt comfortable in myself that that's, truly what I was. I was a bodybuilder. And also, I look pretty fucking dope in these shots here. A little bit on the flat sides due to my own fucking stupidity. I didn't actually hype myself in to prep. I just went, I'm pretty sure I'm 5'11", so we took our weight cap based off that. No, sorry. I think said I'm 5'11", so I'll be 5'10" if I shrink from prep. But I then measured myself a week out. I thought, I should actually probably measure myself so I know what my actual cap is. Turns out I was a smidge above 6 foot. So we had a shitload more room in the cap than we thought we had to. So we did come into the first one a touch on the flat side. But we managed to pull off the win. That's the next picture here. So it was a relatively small regional show in Northern Ireland. It was the Rossburn Emerald Classic. I won my junior class. I won my open class because I was the only one in it. So I can say that I've experienced being the only competitor in my class. But I then won the overall as well. And that was a really good experience for me. It was a small show to get me started, get me settled. And of course, big shout out to Ross for obviously guiding me through that. It was not a smooth prep from a psychological standpoint. I was working a lot. I was working hard. I had a relationship that ended about 4 or 5 weeks out from the first show. It was not smooth at all, but he kept my head on. And big shout out to Yemi as well. He was guest posing at that show, and he took it upon himself to make it his personal mission to look after me backstage as much as possible because obviously he's guest posing, he's allowed backstage. Bro looked after me so much, like, this is when we're going to pump up, this is what you're going to do, get some glaze here, we need a little bit more here. Took me through all of it, looked after me so much that bro didn't even have time to pump up for his own guest posing. So Yummy, if you're watching this, which you're probably not because you're too fucking busy for my shit YouTube videos, I appreciate it, bro. So this was my first show, and despite it being a small show, everyone in the UK industry was there. Everyone who was anyone was there. And I had all these people, these coaches and sort of industry personalities that I'd looked up to from the outside in, now kind of look at me and as part of that inner circle of the industry, and getting the kind of the nod of approval and respect from them, and kind of just, as Ross said, this prep for me, really my first prep, no real expectations. It was just about presenting myself as a competitor and as potentially a threat in the amateur industry. And I definitely did that with this first show. Definitely did that. I remember coming out from backstage after Classic. The men's physique was on just after me, so I didn't want to go back into the crowd because I didn't want to walk in front of the stage. I didn't want to kind of take the attention away from the people who were posing at the time. So the entrance to backstage was at the side of the stage, and the seating arrangement in this one was kind of, it was up on steps rather than just having chairs laid out on the floor. And I looked up, and it was Christian Chapman, who just looked down, gave me the nod of approval. He was, maybe about 5 or 6 rows up, so he was well up high. Just leaned down, put his hand out. I jumped up for a high five, and that was at the moment I was like, yeah, I've got people's respect here as a competitor, as a bodybuilder, and that story holds absolutely no relevance to anything whatsoever. But it was a cool fucking moment for me. But after this, we moved on to part 2 of the prep, which was the 6 weeks until the NPC Europeans Pro Qualifier in London. Naively, I thought, 6 weeks, be fine. I've prepped for 14 weeks at this point. 6 weeks, be fine. Fuck me, I was wrong. It was fucking brutal. Those 6 weeks were harder than the entire prep going into that point. Even the food is higher and cardio was lower, I was dragging fucking ass. So anyone who's done long periods between shows, or anyone who's done long seasons where they spend extended periods of time at basically stage condition, they know it's fucking hard. It's no fun, and I was so naive to how difficult that part of the prep would be. But we got through it. We got back into that tunnel vision after the first show pretty quickly. Got back to the daily grind, and that was the point where my name started circulating a little bit more. A few kind of opportunities opened up. Business started doing a little bit better. And we'll put up the next picture now, which is September 6th, 2024. Put that there. That was about 10 days out from the Pro Qualifier show. Pretty peeled. Pretty good here for a second ever show. It's not bad at all. But as we moved into peak week, I looked fucking great at the start of peak week, and in my own eyes, I just started to look worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Now this is probably just my own eyes, because I was fucked at this. So this next picture I'm going to put up is from the bathrooms at the Sophie Hotel in Heathrow, London, which is where the competition was held. And you can see my face here. I'm looking at the gentleman just to the side of me with a shirt wrapped over his head, who I think is Matthew Clary, the bodybuilding overall winner. And I was thinking to myself, wow, I do not fucking belong here at all. But I was chilled about it. I was going in there with no expectations, and I even thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to come fucking last, but it doesn't matter because, this is just for the experience, and I do have a regional overall title to take out of this season. But Ross had the master plan peak, and it all came together perfectly. right when it needed to. I was so chilled backstage that before we went on, so I did juniors, I did open class C and classic physique. Juniors being one of the first classes, to go on. I was so chilled backstage that I fell asleep. And thankfully, the gentleman who was running the backstage for Two Bros, and I apologize, I do forget his name, but he was the same bloke who was running it at the regional show, so he knew who I was. Thankfully, he kicked me and woke me up and said, Liam, your name's on juniors here. Get the fuck up and start pumping up. So I didn't miss juniors. I went on for juniors. Anyone who's been on stage knows the buzz you get, how much it lifts your energy up. I got off stage after being moved to the centre in the prejudging. Pretty happy, thinking, okay, maybe I'm going to win this junior class. And I made what would normally be the cardinal sin of when you're competing is don't look at your phone until you're done with the show. But I looked at my phone and I looked at a story that I was tagged in, and I thought, I shouldn't look at this, but I fucking looked at it, and I'm actually glad I did, because I looked fucking sick, especially when, people take pictures from the crowd with iPhones and it kind of just crispens things up a little bit. I'm really glad I did, because that boosted my confidence no end. And I thought, you know what, yeah, I'm fucking on. We're challenging for this. So when I went back on about 20 minutes later for the prejudging of the open class C, I was a little bit more confident. Now a little bit more. And I'm going to backtrack a little bit here because there's a funny story. I'm going to name and shame him. Not name and shame him because I don't know his name, but I'm going to point him out in these pictures because the guy's a douche. And there's a funny story that I've told a few people is in the tanning tents, getting the top coat on the morning of the show. A competitor who was stood in the tent next to me leaned over and said, are you classic? I was like, yeah. Are you class C? Yeah. And he looked me up and down and went, should have stayed at home, man. I don't know what the fuck to say. And bearing in mind, I still thought I looked like a bag of milk. So I looked at the guy to the other side of me and I was just like, how do I respond to that? Anyway, I didn't fucking say anything. But that guy, he came on, he was queuing backstage to go on stage before me, and I was looking up at him going, he is twice the size of me, his back is massive, his glutes are peeled, he's bigger than me, he's more shredded than me, he's older and he's got more mature tissue. He told me I should have stayed at home. Maybe I fucking should have stayed at home. But anyway, it was a even number class, so there was no exact middle. There was just kind of joint middle. But after a few poses, Mr. Tyler Mannion moved me into the middle with him. And I thought, you know what, fucking game on. Let's go. Let's do this shit. He was definitely a little bit bigger than me. I was probably one of the smaller or lesser muscle guys on the stage, but I thought the only place I might be able to beat this guy is if I out-classic him. So I changed my favorite classic pose. I made sure I did vacuums on my ab and thighs, my front double. Anyway, after getting moved to joint center, we went off. Went back on for the junior finals, perform the routine, do the finals about maybe 20 minutes, half an hour later. And I won that. So came off from that really, really happy. Went back on 5-10 minutes later for Class C. Got posed hard, did a couple of rounds, and they moved us all to the side of the stage, and they're calling out all the places. They get to third. It's not me. They get to second. It's me and this guy who told me I should have stayed at home. They call second, and it's him. What a fucking douchebag he was. Bad karma, basically. It's bad karma. But anyway, I'm going to put the picture of the juniors on here. That's up there. And now I'm going to put the picture of the open class C and the guy to the right of me doing the ab and bicep, looking off to the side. Yeah, that guy with the Hitler mustache. Yeah, he's the douchebag who told me I should have stayed at home and then lost to me. So take a lesson from that is be humble and don't create bad karma when you're a few hours out from a bodybuilding show. Or the other lesson you could take from it, chat shit, get banged. But anyway, I moved on to the overall. So that was the winner of Class A, Class B, Class C, and Class D. And I very much like this because of the 4 people that were in this overall, 3 of us are now IFBB pros. So I know I can also say that I was in an overall of high standard, which is really cool. But we did a couple of rounds then. I got moved around. It all got moved around. We did a good 3-4 rounds. But we got moved off to the side to call the awards. And it was a very big show. So they had 2 pro cards up for grabs. They called the first pro card and second place, and that was the winner of Class D. That was a Polish fella, and again, I apologize, I've forgotten his name, but they called him out as second, and at that point I thought, kind of fucked it here. But I was still just happy to be there. And then they called out first place and the overall winner, and they must have got a mix-up with the names because they called out mine. I did not know what to think. I was just stood at the side a little bit kind of unable to move and gobsmacked for a good few seconds before I was directed to go into the middle and then told by Ian from Two Bros to stop fucking crying. People haven't come here to see me cry. They've come here to see me smile and see me pose. And I told him it makes good TV, done it. So anyway, that was this picture here. That was the pro card win, the overall of the NPC Europeans. And I guess that kind of rounds off this story pretty nicely. So although I have only done 1 prep and 2 shows before turning pro, I have been bodybuilding since at least 2017 and doing it very seriously since really 2018, 2019. I've been assisted for a good couple of years, and I have lived this life day in, day out for a long time. So I really, really worked for this, and it is all that I know how to do. So I think we'll wrap this up now. Actually, no, I got one more picture to show. Now, this is going to be a recent front double bicep from one of my most recent check-ins with Ross, put next to the front double bicep from my first check-in with Ross. And actually, the body weight here is almost the same. I'm going to put this up here. So, yeah, that's not bad going, really, for about 2 years, maybe just over. It's not bad going at all. So I guess if you can take any lesson from this, it's find what you love doing and fucking put all your eggs in that fucking basket. Put them all in that basket. And chase your dreams, fam. As cringy as that sounds, I did, and I got there, and this is only the start. I'm now entering my last push-up of this first pro off-season before I go into my pro debut prep. And I really could not be more excited to... I think if I carry the same mentality that I took into the pro qualifier, that I look like a bag of milk, I look like shit, I'm going to come last and be so chilled that I fall asleep backstage, that maybe, just maybe, I will not wind up in the last call out. So stay tuned to find out whether I wind up in the last call out of my first pro show. I say stay tuned. There's not going to be for another 6 months or so, but stay tuned. Alright guys, so I've just wrapped up filming that video there. This is a very different video to the normal kind of training footage, day in the life vlog style thing. So if you did enjoy this video, please let me know in the comments, because I will try and do more of them. And equally at the same time, if you thought it was the worst video you've ever watched in your life, let me know, and I won't do anything like this again. Thank you very, very much for watching. Subscribe.